Decks that cause your cards to leave play and come back are classics. Players love enter the battlefield effects, and using them again and again can be very fun. But blink decks also have a bit of a reputation. They can often cause massive slogs and bog down games in a potentially bad way. And since my patrons asked for it, I'm going to make a video on blink decks and how to actually win with them, which I'll tell you after this quick sponsor break. This video is sponsored by Boot.dev. It's a program that helps you learn coding by making it fun and exciting. And they told me to tell you how I honestly feel about Boot.dev. So I will. I went ahead and recorded my first moments using the program so you can get my actual first impressions and see what it feels like. I'm starting with the first lesson. Let's build a game of this quest here. Okay. Print welcome to Fantasy Quest. All right, welcome to Fantasy Quest. I see. Okay. Then use the arrow at the top to fix the math bug on line 3. Should be minus. Oh, and then there's a video. All right, look. This is wrong, right? The C, I'm capitalizing here. I want to know if it's case sensitive in the answers. It's not case sensitive. Look at that. It didn't give me a wrong answer for like a small change like that. That's actually really cool. All right, let's look at some more advanced ones here. This is kind of cool. This is actually really cool that it can go to like much more advanced stuff. And there's so many lessons too. Learn SQL. SQL is so important. Okay, those are my initial impressions. That's like doing the first chapter of the first lesson and some of the second one. Honestly, pretty great. This like the pacing of being able to just like speed through it as a refresher for me, because I haven't coded in a while. For me, this is like a good refresher and I can like move through stuff quickly. And then, you know, once I actually get to something that I have to pause and think about, I have the tools to like figure out what it is. I'm definitely going to be completing this course. And you can get 25% off your first year by using my code TrinketMage. Thanks to Boot.dev for sponsoring the video. So what is a blink deck? A blink deck is usually some sort of onboard control type strategy. Traditionally, a blink deck is used to repeat enter the battlefield effects, and with the versatility of enter's effects you can play, there's a lot you can do with this. There are creatures that remove things, burn players, make tokens, ramp, and you can use those effects over and over again to get a lot of value. Once you have a board full of different blink effects, one single blink spell becomes a super charm with a ton of different effects on it. Blink decks often have turns where they can set up a massive amount of value and then repeat that value almost indefinitely. The reason I call this a control deck is because generally they lean pretty heavy on removal. Once you have any enters effect that is a removal spell, suddenly all of your other blink effects are potential removal spells as well. And if you have a repeatable blink engine, you can just be removing things left, right, and center. The wide array of enters effects that creatures have lets you easily add many different sub-themes to your blink deck. By filling your deck with creatures that make tokens when they enter, you now have a token blink deck. And you can do the same with burn, ramp, life gain, whatever you want to add all these different flavors to your list. That's one thing I really like about blink decks. From the commander, it might be obvious that your opponent is playing a flicker list, but you might not know what sub-themes they have, and it makes each list feel pretty different. There's even a newer leaves the battlefield sub-theme that Wizards has been developing recently. In terms of colors, blink decks almost always have either white or blue. Both of these colors have the most spells that blink things. Ephemerate, Ghostly Flicker, and a bunch of others are staple cards of the archetype. Although, over the years, Red has gotten a lot of cards that create token copies of things. Stuff like Flame Shadow Conjuring, Heat Shimmer, and others let you reuse Enter's effects, and these end up being pretty similar to blink decks in terms of their function. Although the ones that sacrifice on end step let you double up on death triggers, which does add a different spin to it. But I think it's fine to lump these together. In black, you have reanimation effects that kind of work for reusing Enter's effects, if you sack something and then put it back into play. But usually reanimation is just better for cheating out big monsters, which is why you don't really see too many mono black blink decks. Mono green is likely the most difficult to make a blink deck out of. In green, there are plenty of enters effects that are really good, but just not many options to flicker them. Now there are colorless options like Panharmonicon, Conjurer's Closet, and Mimic Vat, which help you get more value from enters creatures regardless of color identity. So in theory, you could use these in any color combination and try and make a blink deck. With this section of the video, I'm talking in generalities. If you cook hard enough, anything's possible. Don't let me stop you from making mono green flicker. Now all of this sounds well and good, but there is a bit of an issue with blink decks. They have a reputation for not being able to actually win games, even when they fully dominate the board. Many times a blink deck can begin to get a crazy amount of value when you have some flicker effect with an Eternal Witness type thing or some doublers. Sometimes you get into these situations where you can destroy and bounce a bunch of things and then loop the flicker spell to just do it again over and over, which becomes a pseudo lock where your opponents are kind of stuck. They can't get out of this unless they either counter the flicker spell or completely clear your board. But then the blink player runs into this problem where their board is mostly small utility creatures, and it will actually take a long time to realistically win the game, creating these big slogs where the blink deck is way in the lead but can't close out the game, so the game kind of stalls out a bit. Now if this is your problem with blink decks, the solution is pretty simple actually. An important part of any control deck is the ability to turn the corner, to switch from controlling to attacking and actually pushing for a win. It's important because you'll lose more games if the game goes really long, since your opponents are more likely to draw into their outs. And also, it's a great time saver. It just speeds up the clock if you have a real way to win the game. Now, most players will run some finisher in their blink deck. The problem is, you might only have one or two of those in there, and you gotta find it. So one way to speed this up is playing tutors, things that let you search up other cards. One example might be Thalia's Lancers. This creature lets you search up legendary cards on ETB. So with this in your blink deck, you just need a legendary card that can consistently help you win games. It can be as simple as an Elish Norn, which will pump up all those dorky weenies and actually swing in for some real damage. And the Lancers isn't just a finisher here, it has other utility. You can use it to search up other legendary creatures that are useful before you want to go for the win. You can also play something like Transit Mage, which is really good in blink decks. You can grab artifacts like Panharmonicon or Conjurer's Closet, which are excellent choices, but also it lets you grab Eldrazi monuments to power up your board and do more damage. Or if you're leaning into a token strategy, tutoring up a Coat of Arms can be lethal. By having creature ETBs that tutor and then being able to find finishers, you can play them early game, find something useful, flicker them late game, find the finisher, and actually factually literally win the game. The other option is playing combos. Deadeye Navigator is the classic. Not only can this ferryman flicker things and flicker itself to dodge spot removal, but with a plethora of creatures that untap lands, you can easily generate infinite mana, and then reuse any other enters effects infinitely for the win. Of course, there are tons of other combos you can do as well. This was just one example, but it does give you a way to definitively close out the game once you've locked up the board and can help speed up those slow games. Now I know a lot of casual players don't like combos or tutors, and I've talked about that to death on this channel. Go watch those videos, I guess. But even if you watch those and you still don't like combos or tutors, for a blink deck that is somewhat control-y, especially if you're in blue, white, or both, if you're struggling to close out the game, I really recommend playing stuff like this to speed up those slow slugfests. Because realistically, when you're at the point where you're just looping the same effects over and over again and controlling the whole board, you pretty much already won. Might as well speed it up and close out the game right then and there. Now, how strong is a blink deck? Overall, I think blink decks are quite powerful. They're relatively easy to construct. All you have to do is play cards that are good, and then you reuse the good cards with blink effects. And cards like Eerie Interlude win games in casual EDH. It lets you dodge board wipes and reset all of those effects to create a ton of value, and since the board is cleared, you can use that to set up the pseudo-lock slogfest situation that I mentioned before. It's honestly kind of hard to mess up a blink deck. It's just all value. Now, how expensive is a blink deck to build? Well, it depends. Since this is a popular archetype, some of the big win more cards are pretty pricey. Those are things that EDH players are drawn to, but a lot of the core cards are pretty cheap. And honestly, you don't usually want too many of these big win more cards anyway, so it's not like you want to jam all these in the same list all the time, meaning you can definitely build on a budget. And once you start blinking and looping those flicker effects, even if you're not playing the most optimal creature you could blink, it's still probably going to be good because you're repeatedly getting value. So if you are someone who is interested in a slightly slower controlling style deck, not built around counter magic but instead ETBs, and a list that doesn't want to swing out early or make enemies early game and instead build up its advantage over time, a blink deck might be for you. There are other variants and spins you can put on it, especially if you lean red. It doesn't have to be a control deck, they just kind of end up being like that. Anyway, let me finish off by recommending a few commanders for different types of blink decks. If you really want to play the true control blink deck, Lavinia of the 10th is a crazy strong commander for a control style build. You can blink her turn after turn and lock so many decks out of a lot of their options. Now, if you want something a bit more aggressive, the pretty new Calamity Galloping Inferno is a great non-traditional blink deck. Basically, you make hasty copies of things, so you get to reuse enter the battlefield effects like Combustible Gearhulk, which is super sweet if you're making copies of that. Lastly, if you want something a bit more mid-rangey and less direct control like Lavinia, Triad of Fates is a really unique old school commander who lets you blink things or exile stuff to draw cards. There's a lot of weird shenanigans you can do with this, and it makes for a fun, strange blink deck. Blink decks are a real mainstay of casual EDH, and I feel a lot of people have at least seen one at their tables. And since creatures with enter the battlefield effects get printed all the time, once you buy some of the staple blink cards, it's actually pretty easy to keep making new flicker lists, because you just swap out the ETB creatures and totally change how your deck functions. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this video informative, interesting. If you did, let me know in the comments below if you're going to build a blink deck. And if you already have a blink deck, let me know in the comments below all about that deck. Thank you very much to my patrons for voting on this topic, and thank you very much to my patrons for supporting me. If you want to be in the credits like my tier 3 patrons here, or vote on future archetype reviews like this, link is in the description below.